Hey everyone, it's Will from Willbrack Design. Today we're going to be doing part 2 of our video series, where in the last video we had a look at creating a simple UI for a login screen. This is what we started with, and this is what we did in the step-by-step tutorial using this pastel color palette here. And we also then created a second login screen. So we've got our start screen and our login screen. And as promised in the previous video, in this video, we will be looking at how to prototype it. So if we just head over to this prototype page, by the way, this Figma document will be available for free in the Figma community, and the link will be below in the description. So please check that out. So the first thing is we're going to be doing it the traditional way. So I've called this the problem, and we'll see why later. We're going to be animating it like so, the traditional way. And then we're going to be looking at a Figma hack. So this is something that I thought up on a lunch break at work, tested it and found out it worked. And I will be showing you that Figma hack later in the video, and that's the solution. So let's have a look at the end result of what we're going to be creating today so that you know at the beginning of the video. So here we've got our start screen, and we've got this animating background. And then when we click Add Join Now, we will transition to the next screen like so. So it's a nice fluid animation, and if we go back, you can see that a few times. What you'll notice is this background continues to animate when we start our transition to the other screen. Where in the traditional way, what would happen is once you transition to this one, because the animated background is being animated through these different screens, you will see a flicker, and we're just going to have a quick look at that now. If I just quickly do a reload, just take a few seconds. So here we can see the animating background looks the same as before, but when I click join now, you'll see that there's a weird stutter, and that's not something we want. We don't want our engineers or to be able to develop this ourselves into the final product. This is not a good representation of what we're trying to achieve. So we'll be looking at this Figma hack, which we can also see is quite strangely just a single screen, and how we can get this nice, we have to keep reloading, which is a bit frustrating, but we can get this nice kind of double layer of animating components stacked on top of each other to create this nice fluid animation. So, excuse me. So this video, to try and keep it a little bit shorter than usual, we're not going to be doing it as a step-by-step tutorial. We're just going to be going through and looking at how each one of these was created. So if you can follow along, that would be great. In the previous video, which I highly recommend you go watch, we created these screens. That will really help if you were to do that tutorial first, so that you know how these screens were built. If not, you can just use this file and recreate it as your own if you create a copy. So let's have a look at this prototype. And we're going to look at what I've titled the problem, but this is the traditional way of doing it. So we've got these screens here. We've got our first screen, and we've got our final screen, and we've got these transition screens in between. Now this could probably have been done a little bit more efficiently, but it still gets the point across. So in between each one of these screens, we've got a transition or an interaction. And this one we start out with the CTA, and we have an on-click event. So when that happens, we're doing a gentle spring animation using Smart Animate over 600 milliseconds to transition to this new screen. And if we have a look at this new screen, we can see that we have our background here, and we have our frame, and inside the frame we've got hang on, am I looking at the right screen? Yeah. We've got some vectors in there, not sure what those are, and we've got our let's get started, which we can see if I go into the design is set to 0%. So what we've done is we've taken this and we turned it to 0%. Same for the text below. And I think what I've done is I've removed the text and I've changed the button to a circle. So what happens is as it transitions from this screen to this one, the text will disappear and the button will squeeze inwards, creating this circle. So the next screen, which looks almost identical, is I've done the same, but what I've done this time is I've removed the button and I've replaced it with an ellipse. just because it's a bit easier to work with than this frame. So the button here is made from a frame with a text inside, and the frame itself, which is creating the shape, has a color and some corner radius. What I've done is, on this third screen, if we look at the transition between, we've got after delay of 1 millisecond, it will instantly swap to this screen. So as soon as it moves to this one, after 1 millisecond, which is a really tiny amount of time, it will instantly switch to this one. And all I'm doing here is swapping out the frame to a circle or an ellipse, just because it's easier to work with. In the next frame, again after a delay of 1 millisecond, over 200 milliseconds, we're going to transition from here to here. And all we're doing here is we're moving this circle up to the center of the screen, so that in the next one, we can then expand that circle so that we're filling the screen with a color. So that's just a nicer way of doing it, using a shape to expand in, than to just flick between two colors, or to just do it as a rectangle. We're doing it with a shape that already exists, and in this case it is the button. So the button goes into a small circle, moves to the center of the screen, and then grows out to replace the background color of the screen. Let's just have a look at that. That's 1 millisecond, and it does an ease in over 200 milliseconds. So there's a nice ease in, curve between these two frames. On the next one, if we look at the transition, again after 1 millisecond, I really like this after delay of 1 millisecond because it's like working with frames inside After Effects. You're essentially saying that once this happens, automatically do the next thing straight away, or after 1 millisecond, but that's as close as we can get to instant. And in this case, we are doing an instant swap, so here to here, so that I can add some additional elements that didn't exist here. So what I could have done, instead of swapping from this one to this one to add some new elements, I could have just reused these ones here, but with the new information. But as we've got some new elements here, I wanted to add them in and then make them invisible. So if we have a look at this input down here, we can see it's the same up here, and the design, we've got a 0%, so it is fully transparent. So essentially, just to explain that a little better, hopefully, is this one to this one. These all share the same elements. So we've got all this stuff. Here we're just making some of it transparent, such as this text. The button, we're just changing the shape and removing the text, or making the text transparent, turning it into a circle. Switching it to a circle or ellipse shape, moving that shape to the center, growing that shape so it fills the entire screen, and then doing an instant swap here so that we can add some additional elements. In this case, it's these inputs and this text down here that didn't exist in the original screen. And we're making it transparent so we can't see it because we don't want it to just flicker on. But we've also added this back button, which, to be honest, let's make that 0% as well, so it doesn't look like it just instantly appears. And then the final transition here, we've got after 1 millisecond again, we're going to do a smart animate of ease out over 300 milliseconds where these elements are going to appear. So they don't just appear, so if I just copy these two and move them over here, and just delete these interactions for a second so we don't get confused, put them side by side. You don't need to do this, but it's just to kind of show what I've done here. So if I just grab all these elements, like so, I think there's another one below somewhere, like that, and make them 100% so we can see them, we can actually see that they've been added but lower down. So in that last transition here, they will not only fade in from 0 to 100%, but they will also subtly move up. So they'll move up 52 pixels. So they're transitioning 52 pixels. And let's have a look at what that looks like again. So there we can see at the end, they slowly move up like that, which is nice. Okay, so that is how that is done, and I'd recommend that you come into the file and take a closer look at how those elements are done. I'm trying to keep this video a bit shorter because some of them have been close to 30 minutes and it'd be nice to have this one a bit shorter. And we're going to be focusing more on what the solution is to that jumping kind of jerky movement, which I'll just quickly show you again. So what we've got is the animating background here, and then we've got these elements animating as well. And because you can't have two animations simultaneously using this method, we will have this kind of jerkiness here where the background kind of animates and then it tries to do the rest of the animation. Okay, so that is the issue we're trying to solve. And how do we do that? So if you've watched any of my other tutorials, there's a tutorial on interactive components. And when you create a library, you create interactive components such as these. So if you look at this interactive components page, we've got a component for our background. And if we click on prototype, we can see this component itself is animated and it's done automatically. So if we look at the first frame, and after a delay of 1 millisecond, it will automatically jump to this frame. And and then again to this one, and then again to this one, and this one finally back to this one. And they are all done automatically after a delay of 1 millisecond. So this is just a looping animation that plays forever. I'm not sure if I can show you that without adding it to a frame. No, but I can quickly do that. So if I just go to my assets, drag it in, add it to a frame, we can now have a look at that animating background looping like so. So that is now just looping on its own. This frame is added automatically by Figma because it is a iPhone 13 Max Pro, I think it is. Let's have a look. Yeah, iPhone 13 Pro Max. So it automatically adds this. I haven't added this myself. Oops. Quickly delete that. Okay, so to create this, it's pretty easy. You just start out with your first frame. Let me just detach it. So pretend you haven't seen any of this. This is just something I've created here. Go back to the design. And I want to create a few different variations of that. So I'll just copy those. And then I'm going to move these around a bit like so. Like that. Just make sure that is actually inside the frame. Like that. And then we're going to call this background animation 1. Copy that. Rename all of them. Whoops. Didn't copy it somehow. There we go. That one can be 2. That can be 3. And that can be 4. Then select them all. Go up to your components tool here and click create component set. It will then add it together like so. I'm just going to tidy that up a bit if I can. Just tidy that up. There we go, so they're nicely evenly spaced. And now that they're inside a component, we can add some interactions to make them an interact component. So you just go to your prototype. From there to there, just do a after delay 1 millisecond. As we want it to be a looping animation, you should have it as linear so that you don't have any weird curves. And we'll say after 1200 milliseconds, it will go to the next one. Same again, after 1 millisecond, and so on. And that is how you end up with this. So you just need to make sure that final frame does the same and goes back to the beginning so that you've got a looping animation. Okay, so I'll delete that. That's how you do that. So that's our animated background created. And this is where the kind of hack comes in. So we're going to actually do the UI as an interactive component as well, because Figma allows you to have simultaneous animations when they are a animated component. because it won't be a prototype driven by frames, it will be, in this case, a single frame. We've only got one frame for this entire prototype. And the animated background, if we click in, we can see that is the animated background, or this. It's this component here, which is going to automatically play and it's going to loop forever. And then our UI, if we have a look, we can see is this component, which is this here. And that's what we're going to create now. So just to show you what this actually is, if I just go in here and bring in our UI, like before, add a frame, and then we can have a look. Okay, so this is our UI. It's got no background, but when we click it, we can see it does that animation that we really want to have. So we've got a nice animation. Click in the join now, we'll see the join now button, go into a circle, move to the center of the screen, and then grow like we were in the original prototype above. But now we can have multiple animations playing at the same time. So to do that, all we have to do is create this component here. And how I've built this is exactly how we built it in the first prototype, but without the background. And then I've selected all of those frames and created a single multiple component out of it. So if I was to do that again, I could, let's just grab this here. I'm just going to detach that and pretend we haven't created it yet. So we can see here inside our frame, we've got our let's get started text. We've got our the best is yet to come. We've got our button, which we can name button so we know what we're doing. And our frame, which we can actually delete because there's nothing in it. So that frame shouldn't be there. That's just a remnant from an earlier design. Then we can bring in another one. And in this case, that was all we did there was we took our text, set it to 0 on the pass-through. So it's still there, but it's now fully transparent. And take the text, again, make 0. And then we take the frame and we just set the width to 60, like so, and then we center it. So if we were to then animate between the two, we would see the text fade out to 0. Same with the join now, and the button frame turning to a circle. And then, as with the previous description, we then did an instant transition between the two, so we could swap that circle for an ellipse, just because it's easier. You don't have to do that step, that's just a personal preference. You could work with the frame and just grow the frame instead. But the difference between a frame and the ellipse is the ellipse always is a circle, whereas the frame, if we were to grow it, for example, like so, we would also have to grow the corner radius as well, which is just an extra step. So I've just swapped it out using an instant transition to an ellipse, move that ellipse to the center of the screen, and then we grow it full, like so. So we make it full screen. And then we do that instant transition from this one to this one, like I mentioned in earlier. And we add the additional elements such as these inputs and all this info down here, make it all 0, move it down a little bit. And then our final screen, we make everything visible and we nudge it up a bit. So we've got a nice transition, and then we save it. So we select all of these. If we had created all of these, go up to our components, create a component set. And then once we've got our component set, we just need to go in and add all the interactions and that's quite easy. You just go to prototype and you drag from here to the next frame, and then you just add your details. So for example, because it requires a button click, we do an on tap, and then we do our eases. And then here we've got our after delay of 1 millisecond, and we instantly swap to this one, and so on and so forth. So like I said, make sure you get hold of this file from the community. The link will be below in the description. Check it out. Try and learn how I've done this as best as possible, and I recommend recreating it. That's the best way to learn. Copy until you can do it yourself, and then you can change the UI up and create whatever kind of animations from the learnings of this video, and that's the end goal. So lastly, we now have these two components. We have our background animation component and we have our UI component. And to create our prototype, we would just go to our assets, add our background, because that's the first thing we want, put it inside a frame, so frame selection, and then all we have to do is drag our UI component on top, like so, align it, centered, and then if we click play, so long as you've done everything correctly, it will just work and it will look great. So we've got the animation happening, clicking join now, that animation continues, and our UI animation plays over the top. And that's just a little Figma hack I've come up with. Let me know if you've got a better idea on how to do this, or you can make it more efficient. That'd be great to share with the bigger community. But I really hope you enjoyed this video and you've learned lots from it. So thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Please let me know your comments below in the comment section. Please like and subscribe. I really need as many people to watch these videos as possible to reach a bigger community. The more the people I reach, the more these tutorials have been worthwhile. As always, they are free and they will remain free. So yeah, please let me know if you've got any ideas for future videos as well. That really helps. And that's everything. Thanks everyone. Bye.